In January last year, I was high above the Mediterranean, sitting with my tray table upright and my seatbelt fastened. As the first bunch of people in Wuhan were probably wondering why their new persistent cough wouldn't go away, I was flying back to my hometown in central India to see my grandfather off for the last time. You see, like a true hipster, he'd contracted a dangerous virus before the other celebrity dangerous virus had gone viral in the world. He had contracted viral pneumonia and was on the ventilator. Sitting on the plane, all I could think of was a memory of his hands, holding mine as I had left for London for the first time a few years ago. He had large, calloused, but soft hands, the creased skin draped over a tangle of blue veins. He was born a Sikh in 1930 in Punjab, in a village amid rolling wheat fields as far as the eye can see. He started tilling the fields with his father from a young age, old enough to be a capable farmhand, but still young enough to gawk as British soldiers passing by in convoys threw candy at him and the other children if they waved a V back at them for victory. His name, Trilok, means the three realms. At the age of 17, he witnessed hell on his doorstep as the British partitioned India and 2 million people died. Around 10 times that were displaced. One of the millions of refugees of the partition was a woman he got married to a year later, my grandmother. Together, they moved to a village in central India, trading golden fields for lush green forests. The new village was barely a few huts and a big banyan tree in the middle for town square. He talked his way into a job as a forest officer. On one of his commutes into work, he came face to face with the forest's original tenant, the majestic Bengal tiger. My grandfather froze, more out of fear than anything else, I think. After a brief stare down, the tiger left, seemingly uninterested. Street smart and crafty, he cut quite a figure in the village in his favorite outfit: white tunic, white trousers, white shoes, and an electric blue turban. Somewhere along the way, he had picked up a fondness for letter writing. This is a trait I have gladly inherited. I love sending and receiving letters. Seeing that there was no post office in the village, my grandfather set about to right this wrong. He would spend the day working in the forest, and at night, by lamplight, he would write his letters to the government. These he would hand deliver to the post office in the nearest city by bicycle, 70 kilometers away. For months, he wrote to them asking for a hospital, a school, and a police station. His persistence bore fruit, and not long after, a very nice man from the state capital came over with assurances to build one cement road, an electricity line to the village, and a post office. Oh, and there was also a strongly worded request to kindly stop sending letters to the Prime Minister's office. My grandfather was ecstatic. He now moved to the city and bought a loading truck with the money he had saved. He transported all manner of things throughout India, from melons to mangoes and bangles to bicycles. During the 1984 Sikh genocide, where thousands of Sikhs were hunted down and killed, he smuggled terrified families in and out of the city by hiding them under a bed of sand. A year later, his son, the eldest of five children, died of tuberculosis. He grieved, and then he threw himself back into work and more trucks. By the age of 60, he felt as if he had provided for his flock, having built a small but prosperous family business from nothing, and with all his children married off. But an easy retirement was not on the cards. Like a comic book villain, my uncle turned on him and my father and absconded with all the hard earned wealth. This broke my grandfather's heart, although he never pressed charges or uttered a word in protest at the hand that had been dealt. He just started again from scratch. I moved to London for work 5 years ago, and my father and I never quite got along very well. But every Sunday, my grandfather would call and show affection and care in a very Indian way. He would ask me when I was going to get married, when I was going to give him great grandchildren because time was running out, and how terrible it would be if he died without playing with my children. And did I want that on my conscience? As you can imagine, that wasn't a very successful strategy. I went straight to the hospital last year to see him, and after a quick series of family hugs, I walked into the harsh lights of the intensive care unit. The smell of sickness, sterility, and the sounds of medical machinery and heart rate monitors washed over me. There he was in a corner bed, more tubes and needles than flesh. As he came to, I took his hands in mine. His hands were soft, as I'd remembered. He looked at me through eyes tired beyond exhaustion and started sobbing silently, the ventilator tube trembling. One of his lungs had completely collapsed, the other was failing rapidly, and the rest of his organs were in free fall. All dysfunctional families are wonderfully weird in their own way. In mine, I am usually tasked with taking decisions like this one. I knew what he wanted. We had discussed it several times over the past few years. I talked to the doctors, and we brought him home. And I sat by his side in the last few hours of his life, my hand firmly clasped in his, as he whispered goodbyes to his children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren. He was calm. Around 4 p.m. that afternoon, he began breathing his last. The nurse asked urgently if I wanted to follow through with resuscitation. I said no. As Terry Pratchett once remarked, no one is finally dead until the ripples they cause in the world die away, until the clock wound up winds down, until the wine they made has finished its ferment, until the crop they planted is harvested. The span of someone's life is only the core of the actual existence. My grandfather had responded with contentment, hope, and even joy in situations when surely the only sensible course to me would have been to despair. He was a complicated man. I miss him more than I remember him. And what I remember most is his voice, a deep baritone that could make 10-year-old me laugh as easily as it could instill a primal sense of fear when he bellowed in anger. In my childhood, his voice served as a wake-up gong at the ungodly hour of 5 a.m. each morning. Barely alive, I'd stagger after him, holding his hand as he led me to the little prayer room in our house, where we would sit cross-legged on the floor and he would read me from scripture. Next up would be yoga at 6, where I would break out in sweats and contortions, trying to emulate the grace, focus, and equanimity of this grand old man.
What a beautiful story. My God, you've introduced us so warmly to your grandfather. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
I
for having
love,
me.
oh, it's a pleasure. I love the image of him with that electric blue turban. It sounds like I can see him. Yeah.
Yeah, he wore that until the very end, every day. No,
Did he?
every day without fail, he would wear that like a uniform.
Oh, lovely. Wow. And letter writing. Do you have letters that he sent you?
He no, he made me write letters of commitment. So I would say he would tell me to do well in my exams, and then I would say, oh yes, I'll try and get 90%, and he would say, okay, write me a letter saying that you would, and you'll seal it, and then we'll open it.
Oh my
So
God.
I have those, and he signed, and I've signed those.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
And you keep writing letters now?
I do, yeah, yeah. I
Oh,
just
lovely.
I think it's an absolutely wonderful thing to do, especially I think especially in pandemic. I think there's
I
something
know.
so considered and examined about writing to someone and reading
Yeah.
that sort of effort in, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have introduced us to your grandfather, which is a beautiful thing, and you've also introduced us to you. And we hope this is the first of many stories we get to hear from you. So please, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Beautiful
Thank you.
story.
But
Wonderful.